Good morning, everyone. Here's your Mormon news update for September 4th, 2025. Today, we're going to start off in New York State, where two missionaries from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints are safe after their car struck a 1,200-pound Holstein cow late Thursday night on Interstate 86 near Newtown Battlefield in Chemung County. Emergency crews from Wellsburg and Elmira Fire Departments responded to the scene. According to officials, the 2025 Toyota was being driven eastbound when it collided with the animal, leaving the vehicle totaled. The missionaries, identified as Elder Jessel, who was driving, and Elder McDonald, were unharmed. An initial report from the Chemung County Sheriff's Office had incorrectly listed McDonald as the driver, but the department later clarified the error. Authorities say they are still working to identify the owner of the cow, which had wandered onto the highway. On Monday morning, both missionaries appeared on the Weibo Morning Show to recount the harrowing experience. Despite the force of the collision, they said they feel grateful to have walked away without injury. These young men are examples of faith and service in our community, Weibo Radio noted during the broadcast, adding that the missionaries continue their work in Owega, where they are assigned. For some more insight about missionaries, let's go to the Facebook group Missionary Mamas Worldwide, where it says, "My missionary just tried to open a Facebook account with his missionary email, and his account was disabled before he even got started. Anyone else have this happen? Advice? He is home MTC this week." There is then a screenshot that says, "We disabled your account. We reviewed your account and found that it still doesn't follow our community standards on account integrity. You cannot request another review of this decision. To learn more about the reasons we disable accounts, visit the community standards. Download your information. Read more about account integrity." Someone then commented, "Don't open an account with your missionary email. Use a personal email account to do this." And then someone else commented, "Facebook doesn't work with a missionary.org email address. They need to use their personal email." Seems that Facebook has a bead on the church's online missionary tactics, and they don't think they have integrity. Now let's discuss an article from the church-run news site KSL. It says the Church History Department of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is preparing to host a conference this week that is the first of its kind. While hosting a church history conference is nothing new for the Church History Department, this conference may be more accessible to average church members, according to Matthew Godfrey, the department's senior managing historian. The department began hosting an annual conference on the Joseph Smith papers in 2017 and continued that event until the volumes were completed in 2023. However, Godfrey said, department leaders wanted to continue hosting conferences and developed a plan to hold one every odd year, while continuing to co-sponsor church history symposiums with BYU on even years. I am trying to figure out why this is the first of its kind when they just said it wasn't. Did I miss something? Is it just because they're hoping to make it available to more people? The article goes on to say, the theme of this year's conference is about discovering the presence of Jesus Christ in church history. Even though we are the Church of Jesus Christ, I think sometimes when we look at our past, we don't necessarily think about Christ being involved in the day-to-day affairs, Godfrey said. Talk about saying the quiet part out loud. The statement from Godfrey points out a problem that many people have highlighted for years, the disconnect between the church's name and its focus. An organization called the Church of Jesus Christ shouldn't need to hold a conference to discover Jesus' presence in its own history. It is obvious from the conference's focus that Christ's role is not immediately obvious or central when members look at their past. This is a "you had one job" kind of irony. The church's history is often taught through the lens of its human leaders, Joseph Smith, Brigham Young, etc. And here, Godfrey confirms that for many, the central figure is supposed to be Jesus, but he has been pushed to the periphery. His words also suggest that Christ's involvement is something that needs to be retroactively inserted into a history that includes controversial and mundane events. It is a bit humorous that God's one true church on the earth is having to search for the divine in its bureaucratic decisions, financial dealings, or political maneuvering, rather than seeing the divine as the obvious, constant, and fundamental element of its story. The history of the Mormon Church, as it's often told, is so human-centric that Christ's presence isn't assumed, it has to be discovered. Back to the article, the conference titled Jesus Christ at the Center of Church History takes place on Friday and Saturday, September 5th through 6th, and will include panels, keynote speakers, and scholars presenting their research. Godfrey said he hopes those who attend will leave with a clearer understanding of Christ's hand in the history of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Petra Javadi Evans, an editorial manager in the Church History Department and the other co-chair of the conference, said that for the Joseph Smith Papers conferences, the audience they expected was scholarly. However, the organizers hope the audience for this conference will include more everyday church members. She said they especially want to see church educators and leaders, including those who teach young adults about church history. That is because so many people are now leaving the church when they find out the truth about church history. This is just another way that the church is trying to plug the giant leaks in the dam. The article goes on to say, "This is his history, and he's been there all along," Petra said. And yet, they have to have an entire conference to convince the members of this. Back to the article. Godfrey said he thinks a planned roundtable discussion with a focus on navigating challenging issues in the history of the Church of Jesus Christ and another on how academics put Jesus Christ in their church history writing will be useful for church members. "We hope it'll be edifying to them and that they'll come away with a stronger testimony of Jesus Christ," he said. Godfrey said that in the last 20 years, with more information available on the internet, members are more often faced with challenging issues in church history. He said he hopes this conference's focus on Christ can help them as they navigate those issues. Man, Godfrey cannot help but speak the truth. Yes, the internet is a huge problem for the church because they can no longer keep their unsavory history hidden away. That conference is coming up this weekend, so hopefully by next week I will be able to report on what happened there. Now let's talk about a few lines from an article in the Salt Lake Tribune. It says, "Never sabotage eternal happiness or the chance to marry for a job opportunity." This was the guidance Kristen Oakes, wife of senior apostle Dallin H. Oakes, offered Saturday to more than 20,000 young single adults and members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Damn, Kristen, this statement is harmful because it presents a false dichotomy between a woman's professional ambition and her spiritual happiness, thereby discouraging her from pursuing a fulfilling career and reinforcing a limiting traditional gender role. It sets up a zero-sum game. You must choose between a job opportunity and eternal happiness through marriage. This is a false choice that ignores the fact that a career can be a source of personal growth, fulfillment, and financial stability. By framing it this way, Kristen is subtly telling young women that their worth and future are solely dependent on securing a male partner, and that a career is a potential threat to that ultimate goal. By advising a young woman to potentially forego a job opportunity for an idealized future of marriage, Kristen encourages a form of financial and personal dependency. This can be incredibly dangerous. It leaves a woman vulnerable in cases of divorce, widowhood, or if her husband cannot provide for the family. It also discourages her from developing her own skills, passions, and a sense of self-worth that is independent of a relationship. And this guidance has already harmed so many Mormon women. Women who, for whatever reason, find themselves 30+ years old with 3+ kids, no husband, and no way to support themselves. Kristen, stop parroting patriarchy. Just stop. The article goes on to say, Kristen recounted her first date with the high-level Latter-day Saint leader and how they decided to meet in a park. As Kristen waited for him, she pondered how she could ever integrate into an already established family of 6 kids and multiple grandkids. She didn't have to wonder for long. Dallin brought one of his daughters to the date, to which Kristen responded, "Do you always double date like this? Relationships require work and time," Kristen said, "so don't judge or misjudge." Can you imagine going on a first date and bringing your adult daughter? A first date is generally understood to be a one-on-one opportunity for 2 people to get to know each other personally and privately. Dallin bringing his adult daughter to a first date is a significant breach of this social norm. It immediately turns the encounter from an intimate individual meeting into a group dynamic and a family affair, which is awkward. The most telling part of the story is Kristen's final quote, "So don't judge or misjudge." Here she highlights admits that she is fully aware of how strange and unusual the situation is. Her preemptive defense of the action suggests that it is not something that would be considered normal or acceptable in most contexts. The need to justify the event underscores its problematic nature. Now let's go to Instagram for a post that says, "Local leaders closed our beautiful ward and chapel to repurpose it as apartments. They claim they don't know what is happening, but church headquarters say local leaders and stake presidency made the decision to move forward with whatever is happening." This post is discussing an LDS meeting house at 6950 Indian Creek Drive in Miami Beach, Florida. And wow, local leaders did not make this decision and likely do not know what is happening. This type of decision is absolutely made by church headquarters. Why are these members possibly being lied to? One of the comments on the post says, "This place of worship is not just a building. It is a sacred space where we have felt the Spirit of the Lord. It has long stood as a beautiful beacon of light in the fastest growing city in the United States, Miami Beach. The church is a stunning choral structure in a unique and sought-after location, cherished both for its safety and its beauty. It has become an iconic landmark where visitors come week after week to worship and feel peace. To think that such a remarkable house of God could soon be demolished is crushing. We believe it is one of the most gorgeous buildings in the entire church, and we are praying for a miracle that it might be preserved. This building was made possible through the sacrifice of many saints. It continues to play an essential role in hastening the work and gathering Israel. Its light reaches not only members of the church, but also countless non-LDS friends and neighbors who are heartbroken at the thought of its loss. If this building is destroyed, it will not only erase a sacred history, but also leave Miami Beach without an LDS church, a place where light is desperately needed. Removing this sanctuary feels like extinguishing a flame. We invite all who love the Lord to join us in fasting and prayer for this sacred building to be preserved. May His light continue to shine in Miami Beach through this holy house." This comment by someone named Candace prayerfully appeals to a higher power, but the most likely reason for the demolition is a mundane institutional financial decision. The plea notes the building is in a unique and sought-after location, which in a city like Miami Beach almost certainly means the land is now worth a massive amount of money. The miracle that members are praying for is a divine intervention against a very human corporate real estate transaction, which adds a layer of tragic irony to the situation. The church is selling off this building because they're going to make a killing, and they don't give a rat's you-know-what about how the members feel about it. Church or corporation, you decide. And last up today, let's go to this great quote that says, "Too many of us have tried to tone down our weirdness for friends or partners, only to later learn that we were suppressing the best things about us. There's no joy like the joy of being your strange self and finding that there are people who love you for it." And that's your update for today, folks. I absolutely hope you have the day that you deserve.